Everyone, let us continue the end game with Chapter 33, Belly of the Beast. In the last part, the Battle of the Centuries happened, the Gorg and his drone army got their butts handed to them, and the Gorg is now running scared with Smek to his spaceship, so Hiro, Baymax, Riley, and Tip, and possibly O are going after him. So, let's continue reading. As Baymax and the van shot towards the massive spaceship that was still emerging through the portal, the group saw the drone carrying the Gorg and Smek disappear into an opening along the side of the ship's long, pointed prow. "Follow him, Baymax!" Hiro ordered as he pointed towards where the drone had gone. "Are you sure we should?" Tip questioned over their comms. "We're heading into his home turf. What if he wants us to follow him and we're walking into a trap?" "What choice do we have?" Riley retorted. "If we don't go after him, he's going to kill Abigail." "Riley's right," Hiro agreed. "Trap or not, we can't let the Gorg hurt anyone else." If Tip had any further objections, she kept them to herself as the group began flying alongside the Gorg ship. As they went, they spotted the opening that the Gorg had disappeared through, a long, rectangular doorway that resembled the entrance to a plane hangar. Veering towards the opening, Baymax and the van swept in through the door. The inside of the Gorg ship resembled the outside, constructed of the same dark metal as the vessel's hull. The interior was also dimly lit, with a sparse few lights at the ceiling providing a small amount of illumination and casting the rest of the hangar in shadows. Quickly glancing around, Riley saw a number of what looked like a number of large racks on either side of the hangar. Sorry. We're so close to the end, and I still haven't gotten over my stumbling problem. As she looked closer, she realized that each of the racks held dozens of unactivated drones. "How many of these things does it have?" Fear whispered. "It's like O said," Samus replied. "Enough to conquer a planet." As they came screaming into the hangar, Hiro caught sight of the Gorg just as it and Smek hopped off the drone they had been riding. "There it is, Baymax!" Hiro shouted as he pointed a finger at the Gorg. "Get it!" Following the order, Baymax accelerated forward, dropping Hiro and Riley to the ground as he went. Hearing the cry, the Gorg had enough time to turn towards Baymax before the android slammed into it, lifting the alien off its feet. Baymax only managed to knock the Gorg off balance for a moment, though, and the alien quickly dug its heels in against the metal floor and ground the android's momentum to a halt. "Looks like things are getting interesting, guys." Snarling in anger, the Gorg wrapped its tentacles around Baymax's arms before tossing him to the side, sending the android rolling across the floor. As Smek scrambled for cover, the drone the two had ridden on turned towards Baymax, its tip glowing with green energy. Before the drone could fire, though, a pulse shot from the van slammed into it, sending the alien machine crashing into a nearby wall. "Nice job!" Riley called over the comm system. "Thanks, but we better make this quick," Tip replied as the van floated to a stop. "I don't have a lot of room to maneuver in here." Nodding her head in understanding, Riley turned her attention towards the Gorg, who was marching in Baymax's direction as the android picked himself up off the floor. Whipping her hand at the Gorg, Riley formed a tendril of microbots that wrapped itself around one of the alien's upper tentacles and attempted to yank it backwards. The force was enough to turn the Gorg slightly before the alien caught itself and refused to be moved another inch. Glaring in Riley's direction, the Gorg yanked its armed tentacle back, snapping the tendril and releasing it. Turning back towards Baymax, the Gorg faced the android just as he threw a sucker punch at the alien's head. As such, the blow struck the Gorg directly in the face, knocking it off its feet. As it was knocked into the air, Riley snapped her hand out again, wrapping a tendril of microbots around the alien's midsection before slamming it against the ground. "Take that, Gorgo!" Snarling, The Gorg snapped the tendril of microbots before standing up and looking around, spotting Smek cowering nearby. "Smek!" the Gorg bellowed, smacking another tendril of microbots away as it did. "Get the others! I grow tired of this game!" "Yes, master!" Smek replied before scurrying away. Turning back towards Baymax, the Gorg ducked as the android flew at it and swung its fist at its head. Ducking beneath the attack, the Gorg allowed Baymax to pass over it slightly before the alien leapt upwards, slamming into the android's midsection and lifting him up into the air before smashing him against the ceiling. Still holding Baymax, the Gorg landed back on the hangar floor before it tossed the android away, sending him crashing into one of the racks of drones. After tossing Baymax away, the Gorg was suddenly tripped as a swarm of microbots pulled around the alien's feet and yanked it to the ground. Grunting in pain, the Gorg quickly pulled its legs free and rolled upright, avoiding Riley's attempt to envelop it in a wave of microbots. Snarling, the Gorg leapt over the microbots as the swarm rushed at it again, soaring through the air towards Riley. Before the Gorg could reach Riley, Baymax came flying in from behind it, slamming into the alien's back and tackling it into a rack of drones on the other side of the hangar, the impact jarring a few of the drones loose, sending them clattering to the floor. As Baymax landed on his feet, he quickly scooped up one of the drones and smacked the Gorg across the face with it, forcing the alien onto all fours. Lifting the drone up, Baymax slammed it against the Gorg's back, slamming it onto its stomach. As Baymax lifted the drones above his head to strike again, the Gorg whipped one of its leg tentacles around, tripping up the android's feet and sending him crashing to the ground. Rolling to its feet, the Gorg scooped up the drone that Baymax had dropped before swinging it in a downward arc that struck the android on the side, the blow sending the robot rolling across the floor. As Baymax rolled to a stop and began picking himself up off the floor, he raised his head to look at the Gorg. As he did, Baymax found the Gorg pointing the drone at him, the tip glowing green with charging energy. Before Baymax could do anything, the Gorg fired a blast from the drone, the green energy striking the android in the chest and sending him flying across the hangar. As the Gorg lowered its weapon, a pulse blast struck it on the side, sending it rolling across the floor and forcing it to drop the drone it had been carrying. Lifting its head, the Gorg saw Tip piloting the van towards it, the pulse cannon attached to the undercarriage humming as it charged another shot. Picking up the dropped drone, the Gorg rolled forward, coming up in a crouched stance underneath the van. Swinging the drone upwards, the Gorg struck the bottom of the van, the force of the blow causing the vehicle to go flipping through the air. "Oh my!" Tip and O let out screams of panic as the van flipped end over end across the hangar before slamming into a wall with a crash, denting the roof and shattering the passenger window. After striking the wall, the van landed upright on the floor, its hoverjets dying with a sputter. Turning towards where the van had crashed, the Gorg leveled the drone at the vehicle, the machine's tip glowing green as it prepared to fire. Before it could, a tendril of microbots whipped around the end of the drone and yanked it to the side just as it fired, causing the green blast to slam into the ground, scorching the metal of the floor. Before the Gorg could react, Riley stepped forward and thrust a fist at the alien, creating a column of microbots that surged forward and slammed into the Gorg's face, forcing it to drop the drone. Before the drone could hit the ground, Riley made a slashing motion with her hand, causing the column to flow apart into a swarm of microbots that snatched the drone out of the air. Raising her hands above her head, Riley caused the microbots to lift the drone up by one of its ends. Clasping her hands together like she was holding a baseball bat, Riley swung her arms across her body, causing the microbots to swing the drone in a mirror of her motion, striking the Gorg across the face with the machine, knocking the alien flat as the drone buckled and warped under the force of the blow. "Don't mess with the Shilo Kitsune, just so you know." Swiping her hands to the side, Riley prompted the microbot swarm to toss the broken drone to the side before she made a pushing motion that caused the tiny robots to go racing towards the Gorg. The microbot swarm reached the Gorg just as it finished standing up, crawling up the alien's legs and attempting to pull it to the ground. Roaring in rage, the Gorg began swiping its armed tentacles at its legs, sending fistfuls of microbots scattering across the hangar floor. Distracted by the microbot assault, the Gorg didn't notice Baymax approaching until the android had landed in front of it. The Gorg had enough time to raise its head before Baymax struck the alien on the chin with an uppercut. The force of the blow was enough to knock the Gorg off its feet and free it from the grip of the microbot swarm. Shooting upwards, the Gorg hit the hangar ceiling with enough force to dent it, the sound of metal striking metal echoing through the cavernous chamber. Oh, you got knocked the buck out! Before gravity could pull the Gorg back towards the floor, a thick column of microbots shot up from below and slammed into the alien, crushing it further against the ceiling. Oh, that's gotta hurt. That's gonna hurt in the morning, isn't it? A moment later, the microbots swarmed around the Gorg's chest and latched onto it before yanking the alien downwards and slamming it against the floor with another loud clang. Laying stunned for a moment, the Gorg wasn't able to resist as Baymax rested a foot against the alien's chest and pointed his fist at its face. Surrender is advisable, Baymax informed the Gorg. Very well, the Gorg replied with a predatory grin. I accept your surrender. Yep, who's the best? We are. We're not surrendering, Riley stated as she stepped up next to Baymax. You are. Oh, am I now? The Gorg questioned before letting out a laugh that caused the hairs on the back of Riley's neck to stand on end. No, I think not. Something's wrong here, Fear whispered. We have the upper hand here, Hiro pointed out as he stood on Baymax's other side. The Gorg laughed again, putting them all on edge this time. Did you really think you could come onto my ship, my home, and have the upper hand? The Gorg questioned, his voice dripping with a poisonous cocktail of mirth and contempt. Oh, you poor little fools. The Gorg's words were punctuated by the sound of shattering glass, followed by a scream. Snapping her head in the direction the sound had come from, Riley watched with wide eyes as a pair of boobs dragged a struggling tip through the driver's side window of the crashed van, as a dozen more of the aliens swarmed over it. Tip! Riley screamed as she moved to help her friend, leaving her unprepared as the Gorg lashed out with one of its leg tentacles and struck her in the stomach. The blow knocked Riley clear off her feet, sending her tumbling across the hangar floor. Riley grasped her stomach as she rolled to a stop, taking deep, painful gulps of air. Riley! Hiro shouted, his voice filled with fear as he ran over to the girl's side. Baymax watched him go, giving the Gorg enough of a distraction to push the android's foot off of its chest. Before Baymax could react, the Gorg reached up and wrapped all four of its tentacles around the android's arm, holding it in place. With a snarl of effort, the Gorg began pulling at the gauntlet before eventually ripping it off in a shower of sparks and screeching metal. Oh my goodness! Oh, great. We're not losing this final battle, guys. We are not losing this final battle. Falling to the floor as Baymax stumbled back, the Gorg quickly rolled to its feet and rushed at the android. Before Baymax could react, the Gorg slammed its shoulder into the android's chest and knocked him flat on his back. Baymax attempted to rise, but the Gorg quickly stepped over the android and slammed one of its leg tentacles against the robot's chest, forcing him onto his back. The Gorg proceeded to stamp on Baymax's chest a half-dozen more times, the blows denting and warping the metal armor. Finally, the Gorg stepped completely on top of Baymax's chest and leapt up before slamming the weight of its entire body onto the android's body, causing the armor to completely buckle under the force of the blow. Oh my goodness! Well, that's how you wreck powered armor, isn't it? Cheese and crackers. Cheese and broken crackers, I should say. Stepping off of Baymax's chest, the Gorg reached down and yanked the front of the android's breastplate off in a shower of sparks before tossing it aside, sending the now ruined metal skittering across the hangar floor. Standing over Baymax, the Gorg raised its arms above its head, ready to bring them down on the android with a crushing blow. Before it could, though, Riley lashed out with a pair of microbot tendrils from behind, grabbing hold of the Gorg and holding him in place. Looking back over its shoulder, the Gorg locked eyes with Riley, who was kneeling on the floor with Hiro crouching beside her, her arms outstretched towards the alien. "Leave him alone!" Riley shouted, anger rolling off of her like heat from a flame. "I do not believe you are in a bargaining position, whelp," the Gorg stated with a bloodthirsty grin. Another scream sliced through the air again, causing Riley and Hiro to both look in the direction it had come from. They found Smek holding Tip up in front of him with one of his tentacles wrapped around her neck, the other clutching some kind of futuristic-looking gun that he held pressed to the girl's head. Behind her, they could see O being held to the ground by two other Booth. Oh my. Lady Luck is not smiling upon us, isn't she? Please don't kill Tip. I am suggesting that you will be immediately surrendering, Smek stated with a dangerous smirk. Riley's eyes widened in horror as she looked at her friend, before her eyes focused on Smek, her eyes narrowing to angry slits behind her mask. As she glared at him, Smek's skin took on a yellow shade as he let out a whine of pain, and he began scrunching his face up in agony. Riley's psychic assault was cut off, though, when the Gorg suddenly stepped between her and Smek. As he did, Riley felt an alien sense of emotion wash over, a mixture of common feelings and ones that she had never experienced before. The sensation caught Riley off guard, and she physically rocked backwards and would have fallen backwards if Hiro hadn't been there to steady her. "I grow tired of your mind games," the Gorg stated, his eyes practically boring a hole through Riley's head. "Attempt that again, and you will be mourning your friend's headless corpse." Looking over at Tip, Riley saw that Smek had recollected himself and had placed the gun back against her temple. Riley locked eyes with Tip and felt a flood of fear and sadness fill her up. Glancing over at Hiro, Riley held his gaze for a second, and it was in that moment that she knew what they had to do. "What do we do?" Anger questioned. "The only thing we can do," Sandus replied. "All right," Riley said with a sigh as she lifted her hands up and removed her mask, causing the microbots around her to suddenly fall to the ground in loose piles. "We give up." "Hiro?" Baymax questioned, looking over at the boy as he slowly began pushing himself back to his feet. "Stand down, Baymax," Hiro stated as he gestured to the android to stay where he was. Baymax looked hesitantly between Hiro and Tip before he settled into his neutral stance. "Very good." The Gorg growled with a nod, before reaching out with one of its tentacles. "Now, give me what I desire." Riley responded by reaching down into one of the piles of microbots and fishing around for a moment, before pulling out the oval stone that she had taken from Callahan. Lifting it up, she held it out so that the Gorg could see it. The Gorg quickly stomped over to where Riley was and reached down to take the stone from her, but stopped as the girl quickly pulled it out of the alien's reach. "Promise me you'll spare my friends," Riley said quickly. The Gorg glared at Riley for a moment before grinning broadly. "Even now, you make the demands," the Gorg commented with a chuckle. "You have goal, whelp, and I admire goal. I will spare your friends. I assume you wish to be spared as well." Yeah. Yes, please," Riley quickly replied. "Abigail, too." "Of course. All aboard the ship shall be spared," the Gorg replied before the grin fell away. "Now, give it to me." Reluctantly, Riley held the stone back out to the Gorg, who quickly snatched it from her grasp. Holding it up, the Gorg gazed at the stone for a quiet moment, before reaching out and running the tip of one of its tentacles carefully, almost lovingly, across the stone's surface. If you've seen Home, like I have, you will know exactly why that stone was so important to Smek. If you haven't, please don't spoil this for anyone in the comments, because it is a spoiler for Home. The story will eventually explain what it truly is when we finally get to the end. "Release the child, Smek," the Gorg stated as he continued to stare at the stone. Smek seemed to hesitate for a moment, before he snarled in disgust and shoved Tip away from him, causing her to stumble for a moment, before falling to her knees. Riley glared at Smek for a moment before turning her attention back towards the Gorg. "And Abigail?" Riley questioned. "Of course," the Gorg said, finally tearing its eyes away from the stone and looking at Riley. "I am just as eager to have our transaction completed." With that, the Gorg turned away from Riley and Hiro before motioning for them to follow. As they fell in line behind the Gorg, Baymax joined them as they walked by where Tip was still kneeling on the ground. Rushing over to Tip's side, Riley leaned down and helped the other girl to her feet, before quickly pulling her into a hug. "Are you okay?" Riley questioned as she pulled out of the hug. "I'm alright," Tip replied, though Riley could tell that she was still shaken. "What are we going to do?" "I don't know," Riley admitted, doing her best to look brave for her friend. "But we'll think of something." "Be moving now, humans," Smek spoke up as he gestured aggressively at the group with his gun. Why did I say goop? "We are not having all the times for your standings here." Reluctantly, the group continued to follow the Gorg, the rest of the booth leading along as they went. Together, the group made their way through the bowels of the ship, which seemed to be made up of nothing but endless, dimly lit corridors. Eventually, the group came to a massive chamber that Riley guessed was somewhere near the middle of the pyramidal ship. Indeed, the room itself was pyramidal in shape, with each of its four sides displaying some kind of screen, each of which showed images of the battle that was apparently still raging outside, while each of the four corners held an entrance. What appeared to be computer consoles sat facing each of the screens, at which Boob were busily entering commands, their gazes focused on the screens. At the center of a room sat a large metallic chair that looked like the cross between a captain's chair and a throne. Ooh, Captain's throne room. Interesting. Guys, now that we're so close to the end, this story is getting more and more interesting by the minute. I'm gonna miss reading this story. I really am. It's been a wild roller coaster ever since June of last year. I started this story because I was really interested in doing things other than MLP. And this story ended up being my cup of tea. It was really fun. I love Big Hero 6, and I love home. I never did get to see Inside Out, but I will do in the future. The next story that I read, I think, well, it might be about 20-ish, about over 20 chapters. It won't be 30 chapters. It's gonna be something a bit more, the next story is basically gonna be a continuation of the Valentine's Day video that I did with Fox and Vixen from the Animals of Farthing Wood. I will tell you more after I've read the last chapter. But for now, Finmonster, thank you so much for writing this story. I'm glad to have been able to record it. Almost all the chapters. I've got about 3 chapters left now. Oh. Where are we? Hiro demanded, his eyes drifting to the image of the drone still swarming through the air over the Kraytech campus. I thought you were bringing us to Abigail. I thought it would be easier if we met halfway, the Gorg explained. As it spoke, the group heard a grunt coming from the entrance directly across the room from them. Looking in that direction, the group saw a pair of boov emerge, holding up Abigail as they went, causing her legs to drag against the ground. Once they reached where the others were, the boov let Abigail drop to the ground, the young woman groaning as she lay with her face pressed against the black floor. Well, we did find out that, Abigail had landed in the boov homeworld, so since then, the Gorg was keeping her captive on his ship. Which reminds me, I wonder when we'll see General Monger again. Will it be in the final chapter? Abigail! Riley exclaimed as she, Hiro, and Tip quickly kneeled over the young woman. Are you alright? Letting out a cough, Abigail managed to lift herself up enough to look at the kids, allowing the group to see that her face was dirty and bruised, as a look of confusion crossing her features. Who are you? Abigail questioned, her voice hoarse. I'm Hiro Hamada, Hiro answered before motioning to the girls. These are Riley Anderson and Tip Tucci. We're here to rescue you. Abigail looked in between the 3 children for a few moments, before a small smile crossed her features. Aren't you guys a little short to be stormtroopers? Abigail questioned with a chuckle. Yes they are. Maybe, Hiro replied with a smirk of his own. But we're here all the same. Glancing around, Abigail took in the sight of the booths surrounding them, as well as the Gorg, who had sat upon the chair in the center of the room, examining the oval stone Riley had given him. I don't mean to criticize, but it doesn't seem to be going very well, Abigail commented as she settled herself on her knees. Well, with any luck, we should be getting you out of here soon all the same, Riley reassured her. Is this story gonna be over in about the end of this chapter already? No, it can't be. There's over 3 chapters left. And, I doubt that the Gorg is just gonna let them go that easily. Unless he's true to his word. She's right, Hiro stated as he turned his attention towards the Gorg and stood up, a determined look on his face. Hey, I thought we had a deal. Slowly, the Gorg turned its gaze toward Hiro and seemed to study the boy for a few moments. After a silent moment, the Gorg grinned broadly. Of course, the Gorg answered. I will bring our business to a close, gladly. Okay. Well, it looks like this chapter is going to end rather interestingly. So I take it that the next 3 chapters are going to be the epilogue of some kind? I don't know. With that, the Gorg turned his attention towards Smek, who was standing near one of the consoles. Smek, the Gorg stated. Activate the main weapon. Oh, it's not over yet! With most joy, master, Smek replied with a savage grin before shouting something at the other booth in a language that the group did not understand. Weapon? Riley demanded. What are you doing? This could have been so much simpler, the Gorg lamented, turning his gaze towards the group. If you had merely given me what I wanted when I demanded it, I would have already left this world in peace. But you defied me, and now you and the rest of your pathetic kind shall learn the price of defiance. Oh my god! As he spoke, the pictures on the screen surrounding them changed, with many showing readings that the group could not decipher. The screens directly behind the Gorg changed to a schematic of the ship, which looked like an oversized version of the drones. As they watched, lines of energy ran down the sides of the ship before concentrating on one of the points. You can't! Tip exclaimed, her fear rising exponentially. You promised everyone would be spared! Hiro added angrily. I swore everyone on this ship would live, the Gorg corrected. I said nothing about those on the planet beneath it. You monster! Riley snarled. Waste your breath on whatever insults you wish, the Gorg replied. But I suggest you accept your lot now. Better to live as a slave than die to the power of this vessel. Riley, Hiro, and Tip looked at each other in horror before their gazes turned towards the screen, watching as the ship prepared to kill their friends and loved ones. What are we going to do? Sandus whispered. Son of a fire-trucking, rabbit-hopping, shoe-gumming, ball-flinging, bouncing, buffering balls! Ended up having a lot of fun with this chapter. Yes, you did, Finmonster. Well, that is the cliffhanger for the ages that I'm going to resolve in next video. So, until next time, I'm the Master Ranger saying keep moving forward, have a good night, and be on the lookout for any spaceships in the sky trying to fire on the Earth, will you? It is going to be fun!